What happens when Hollywood's most carefully guarded smile freezes under studio lights? When a question hangs in the air, so long it starts to feel heavier than the cameras themselves? What happens when Leonardo DiCaprio, global icon, Oscar winner, master of controlled charm, falls into a silence so deep that even daytime television doesn't know how to save him? Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, hit that like button, and drop a comment if you love these raw, cinematic deep dives into celebrity moments that were never supposed to go this way. The applause hits first. Loud, polite, almost rehearsed. The kind of applause that fills space before anyone has time to think. Leonardo DiCaprio steps out onto the set of The View, waving casually, that familiar half-smile already in place. He's worn it for decades, on red carpets at award shows, in press junkets where every question is expected and every answer is practiced. Today should be no different. That's what his team thought. That's what the audience thought. That's what Leo himself thought as he shook hands, exchanged hugs, and took his seat at the table. But something feels off. The energy in the room isn't playful. It's alert. Sunny Hostin sits across from him, posture straight, hands folded neatly in front of her. She's smiling, but it's not the kind of smile meant to comfort. It's the kind meant to focus. The camera's cut between faces. Joy's curious glance, Whoopi's unreadable calm, Sarah's polite nod. And Sunny. Sunny is waiting. Leo crosses his legs, adjusts his jacket. The host introduces him with praise, as always, his legendary career, his environmental advocacy, his latest project. He nods along, says thank you, laughs lightly at the right moments. The audience responds warmly. Everything is working exactly as it's supposed to. Until it isn't. Sunny leans in just slightly. Not aggressive. Not confrontational. Just enough to signal that the tone is shifting. Leonardo, she begins, her voice measured, almost gentle. You've spent years being one of the most influential voices in Hollywood. People listen to you. They watch how you move. How you live. Leo nods again, still relaxed. I try to use that platform responsibly, he says. Safe. Clean. Perfect. Sunny tilts her head. And yet, she continues, pausing for half a beat, there are moments when people wonder if the image and the reality fully align. The audience murmurs. Not loud enough to interrupt, but loud enough to register. Leo blinks. Can you explain what you mean? He asks, still smiling, but now it's thinner. More careful. Sunny doesn't rush. She never does. You speak passionately about accountability, she says. About change. About awareness. But some critics say that when it comes to personal choices, relationships, influence, power, there's a disconnect. The smile disappears. It doesn't fall dramatically. It doesn't crack. It simply stops, like a switch turned off. The silence stretches. 1 second. 2. 3. Leo looks down at the table, then back up. His mouth opens slightly, then closes again. You can almost see the gears turning, the internal calculation. How do I answer this without making it worse? The cameras zoom in. Sunny waits. The audience shifts in their seats. Someone coughs. A chair creaks. The studio feels suddenly smaller, tighter, like the air itself is holding its breath. Well, Leo finally says, but the word trails off. He clears his throat. I think it's important not to reduce people to headlines. Sunny nods, encouraging but firm. Of course, she says. But headlines don't appear in a vacuum. Another pause. This one is longer. Leo's jaw tightens. His hands, once resting casually, now clasped together. He glances briefly toward Whoopi, as if searching for rescue. Whoopi doesn't interrupt. She watches. Calm. Observant. I'm human, Leo says finally. I make mistakes. Like anyone else. Sunny leans back slightly. Do you think acknowledging those mistakes publicly matters, especially when so many young people look up to you? That's the moment. That's when the silence stops being just awkward and starts becoming uncomfortable. Leo doesn't answer. Not right away. 5 seconds pass. Then 10. The audience realizes something is wrong. This isn't a dramatic pause for effect. This isn't a thoughtful beat before a polished response. This is someone caught off guard in a space where there's nowhere to hide. His eyes flicker, scanning the studio lights, the crowd, the table. For the first time, he looks exposed. He starts, then stops. He exhales through his nose, slow and controlled. I think there's a danger in turning personal lives into moral performances. Sunny's expression doesn't change. And do you think that danger outweighs accountability? Another silence. This one is heavy. The camera cuts to the audience. Faces frozen. Eyes wide. Phones subtly raised, recording despite the rules. Everyone can feel it. This moment will not disappear when the show cuts to commercial. Leo shifts in his seat. The charm isn't working. The deflection isn't landing. He knows it. I don't believe I owe the public a blueprint of my private life, he says, his voice firmer now, defensive edges creeping in. What I owe is my work, my advocacy, my commitment to causes that matter. Sunny responds immediately. But when your private life contradicts the values you advocate for, doesn't it affect the message? The words land like a dropped glass. Sharp. Irreversible. Leo freezes. This time, there is no answer at all. The silence stretches so long that it feels almost disrespectful. Not from Sunny, but from the moment itself. Even the applause sign, usually quick to rescue tension, stays dark. In that quiet, you can hear everything. A nervous laugh from somewhere in the back. The soft hum of studio equipment. Leo's own breathing, slow but audible. His face hardens, not in anger, but in something closer to resignation. I don't agree with that framing, he says finally carefully. And I think it simplifies complex human behavior into sound bites. Sunny doesn't argue. She lets the statement hang there. Complexity doesn't erase responsibility, she replies. The audience reacts audibly now, gasps, whispers, a ripple of tension moving through the room like electricity. Leo nods once. A short, stiff motion. I hear you, he says. But the way he says it makes it clear. This conversation is not going where he expected. And for the first time in a very long time, Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't seem in control of the narrative. The host thanks him for his honesty, but the warmth from earlier is gone. The conversation moves on, but the energy never fully recovers. Leo answers the next questions with shorter responses, careful phrasing, guarded expressions. The audience applauds out of habit, not enthusiasm. And when the segment finally ends, when the cameras pull back and the lights dim just a fraction, Leo exhales deeply, like someone who's just walked out of a room where the air was too thin to breathe. What no one in that studio fully understands yet is that the silence they just witnessed is already echoing far beyond those walls. And it's only the beginning. The silence doesn't end when the cameras cut to commercial. It lingers, clinging to the studio like a fog that refuses to lift. The audience applauds out of instinct as the lights dim slightly, but the sound feels hollow now, disconnected from the tension that just unfolded. Leonardo DiCaprio remains seated for a moment longer than necessary, hands still clasped, gaze fixed somewhere past the table, past the hosts, past the smiling screens. Sunny Hostin adjusts her notes. Her expression is calm, professional, but there's a tightness around her eyes. She knows what just happened. Everyone does. When the lights come back up, the producers have clearly shifted gears. Softer questions. Safer territory. Films. Craft. Climate change. Things Leo knows how to talk about in his sleep. But something has shifted inside him, and no amount of polished answers can fully reset the room. So tell us about preparing for this role, Joy asks brightly, almost cheerfully, like she's trying to pull the show back onto familiar rails. Leo nods, grateful for the lifeline, but his voice lacks its earlier warmth. It was intense, he says. A lot of research. A lot of time alone. The irony hangs unspoken. Sunny listens quietly now, no interruptions, no follow-ups. She lets him speak, lets him fill the space. But the audience's attention never fully returns to the film. They're still thinking about the pause. The look. The way a man who has navigated Hollywood for 3 decades suddenly seemed unsure of his footing. As the segment wraps, Whoopi thanks Leo for joining them. The applause comes again, louder this time, but it feels forced, like everyone is trying to convince themselves the moment has passed. Leo stands, shakes hands, flashes that familiar smile once more, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Backstage, the energy is different. No bright banter. No relaxed laughter. His publicist steps in quickly, murmuring something low and urgent. Leo nods, running a hand through his hair. He exhales, long and slow. That got weird, someone mutters off camera. Leo doesn't respond. Instead, he keeps walking. Within minutes, clips are already being cued. Social media interns, producers, assistants. Everyone knows the rule now. If something feels uncomfortable live, it's going to explode online. And explode it does. The first clip hits X before Leo even leaves the building. A tight zoom on his face. Sunny's question. The silence, looped and looped again. Captions appear instantly. Leo had a no answer grimacing face. Sunny Hostin just made Leonardo DiCaprio freeze on live TV. That silence said everything. By the time Leo's car pulls into traffic, his phone is vibrating nonstop. Texts from friends, from colleagues, from people he hasn't spoken to in years. You good? Saw the clip. Wild. That pause, though. He doesn't open them. At home, the television is already on. His assistant has left it running, muted, looping coverage from entertainment news channels. His own face stares back at him, frozen mid-silence, overlaid with dramatic music and bold text. Uncomfortable moment on The View. Leo drops his keys on the counter and sinks into the couch, rubbing his temples. He's replaying the moment in his head now, over and over. The way Sunny looked at him. Not angry, not accusatory, just steady, unmoved by charm. He hates that part the most. Across the country, Sunny Hostin is doing the same thing, but from a different angle. She sits at her kitchen table, phone face down, a mug of tea growing cold beside her. She knew the question would land hard. She debated it with herself the night before. Is this the right moment? Is this the right guest? But something in her told her not to soften it, not to dance around it. Accountability, she believes, isn't supposed to be comfortable. Her phone lights up anyway. Messages from producers. From friends. You okay? That was intense. You went there. Sunny exhales. I did, she says quietly to herself. By evening, the moment has evolved from a clip into a conversation. Panels debate it. Hashtags trend. Comment sections split clean down the middle. Some defend Leo fiercely. He doesn't owe anyone his personal life. This was an ambush. Sunny crossed a line. Others aren't so generous. If you preach values, live them. That silence was telling. He finally got asked the real question. The silence, once just a pause, has become a symbol. People project onto it. Guilt, discomfort, reflection, arrogance, vulnerability. Everyone sees something different. Leo's team scrambles. Statements are drafted, redrafted, deleted. Should he address it directly? Should he ignore it and let it pass? Every option feels risky. He didn't actually say anything wrong, his publicist insists during a late-night call. It's just optics. Leo stares out the window, city lights blurring below. It didn't feel like optics, he says. It felt personal, because it was. The next morning, Sunny walks onto the View set again. The energy is electric. The audience is buzzing before the cameras even roll. Everyone knows what they're there for. Whoopi opens the show with practiced calm. Yesterday, we had a conversation that sparked a lot of discussion, she says. And that's kind of the point. Sunny feels the eyes on her. She keeps her posture steady. We're not here to attack guests, Sunny adds when it's her turn to speak. But we are here to ask questions people are already asking at home. The applause this time is louder, more genuine. Leo watches the clip later, jaw tight. He doesn't disagree with her words, but he resents the way the moment escaped his control. He's used to being the one steering the narrative. This time, the narrative ran him over. Friends call with advice. Just let it blow over. Post something vague about growth. Don't engage. But Leo knows something has shifted. He feels it in the way his name trends. In the tone of articles. In the questions he's going to be asked from now on. The silence on The View didn't end when he finally spoke. It followed him off the stage, into his home, into the public consciousness. And the longer it echoes, the harder it becomes to ignore. Because now, everyone is waiting to see what Leonardo DiCaprio does next. And Sunny Hostin? She's already preparing for the follow-up, whether it happens on camera or somewhere far less controlled. The confrontation may be over, but the tension? It's just getting started. By the third day, the silence has a name. Pundits call it the pause. Fans call it the freeze. Critics call it the tell. And Leonardo DiCaprio feels it everywhere, like a shadow that moves faster than he does. He steps into a private meeting room at his production office, walls lined with framed posters of films that once defined him. Titanic, The Aviator, The Revenant, proof of legacy, proof of control. Today, they feel less like achievements and more like witnesses. His team gathers around the table. Laptops open, phones buzzing. A crisis manager he hasn't needed in years clears her throat. We need to decide the tone, she says. Silence, clarification, or confrontation. Leo leans back, arms crossed. Confrontation with who? With the moment, she replies. With what people think that silence meant. He closes his eyes briefly. He knows what they think it meant. He's read enough comments against his better judgment to see the patterns. He was caught. He was exposed. He didn't expect a woman like Sunny Hostin to press him that way. That last one bothers him more than he wants to admit. Across town, Sunny is fielding her own wave of reactions. Interviews. Requests. Think pieces dissecting her tone, her posture, her choice of words. She's praised for bravery in one headline, accused of hostility in another. She doesn't correct either. On the show, the hosts circle back again, not to Leo directly, but to the idea of public accountability. Whoopi frames it carefully. Joy pushes back. Sarah mediates. Sunny listens, then speaks. There's a difference between privacy and immunity, she says, voice steady. We can respect someone's personal life and still question the impact of their choices. The audience applauds. Not wildly. Thoughtfully. Clips of that line spread fast. Leo watches it alone that night, the room dark except for the glow of the screen. He pauses the video, rewinds, watches again. He isn't angry now. He's unsettled, because a small, unwelcome thought keeps returning. What if she's not wrong? He shakes it off. He's not here to self-flagellate. He's built a career on nuance, on understanding complexity. The internet doesn't do nuance. It does verdicts. Still, when he meets with a director the next day, the conversation drifts. Man, the director says cautiously, that view thing rough. Leo forces a laugh. Yeah, daytime TV, huh? But the director doesn't laugh back. It's not that. It's just people are reading a lot into it. They always do, Leo replies. Yet later, alone in his car, he replays the moment again. Sunny's eyes. The pause. The way the room seemed to lean forward, waiting for something more than a PR-safe answer. Waiting for honesty. Meanwhile, the internet escalates. Old interviews resurface. Side-by-side clips appear. Leo speaking about values, then tabloid photos meant to undermine those words. Commentary grows sharper, less charitable. He talks about responsibility but dodges it when asked. That silence was louder than any speech. This is what happens when you're not used to being challenged. Sunny doesn't comment on the pylon. She never names Leo again. But that restraint becomes its own statement. On The View, a guest mentions the moment casually. It felt like a cultural shift, they say. People want more than talking points now. Sunny nods once. People want truth, she says. Or at least an attempt at it. The line trends. Leo's publicist finally convinces him to record a short statement. Not an apology. Not a rebuttal. A reflection. They set up a camera in a neutral space. Soft lighting. No distractions. Leo sits forward, elbows on knees, trying to project sincerity without vulnerability. I've been thinking a lot about the conversation on The View, he begins. I believe dialogue is important, even when it's uncomfortable. He stops, frowns, shakes his head. That sounds like a press release. They try again. This time, he speaks without notes. About complexity. About growth. About learning in public. It's better, but something's missing. You never actually address the question, the crisis manager says gently. Leo looks up. Because there isn't a clean answer. Silence fills the room again. Not the televised kind. The real kind. Maybe say that, she suggests. The video never gets posted. Instead, a different clip dominates the cycle. A slowed-down version of Leo's pause, set to dramatic music, intercut with Sunny's calm expression. Commentary overlays it like a courtroom argument. Notice who's comfortable here. Notice who isn't. This is what power being questioned looks like. Leo stops watching. Days pass. The frenzy cools slightly, but the residue remains. Journalists frame questions differently now. Fans debate him with more edge. His image hasn't shattered, but it's cracked. And cracks let light in. At a charity event, Sunny attends quietly, no cameras invited. A mutual acquaintance approaches her. You know, they say, he's really shaken by that. Sunny raises an eyebrow. By the question? By the silence. She considers that. Silence can be revealing, she says. Even to the person sitting in it. Later that night, Leo attends a private dinner. Someone brings up The View again, half-jokingly. You survived, they tease. Leo smiles, but it's tired. I don't know if survived is the word. They look at him, surprised. Because that's the truth he hasn't said out loud yet. The moment didn't damage his career in a traditional sense. No contracts were lost. No awards revoked. But something subtler happened. He lost the comfort of unquestioned admiration. And Sunny Hostin, whether she intended to or not, was the catalyst. The silence between them, one question, one pause, has become a mirror held up to a culture that's changing, to power being asked to explain itself, to icons being reminded they are still human. As the noise slowly fades, one thing becomes clear to both of them, in very different ways. That conversation on The View wasn't a scandal. It was a reckoning, and reckoning doesn't end neatly. It waits for what comes next. By the time a full week passes, the silence has transformed into something else entirely. It's no longer just a clip or a trending topic or a sharp intake of breath frozen in time. It's a reference point, a moment people return to when they talk about celebrity, power, and the shifting rules of public accountability. The studio audience from The View tells their stories online now. One woman posts, "I was there." You could feel it. The room changed. Another writes, "I've never seen a star look that human on daytime TV." Their words spread, adding texture to a moment that once lasted only seconds. Media outlets run retrospectives instead of breaking news. Slow motion analysis. Body language experts weighing in. Psychologists discussing discomfort and ego. Cultural critics calling it a quiet turning point. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't respond to any of it directly. Instead, he goes quiet. No social media posts. No statements. No carefully timed public appearances. When he finally does step back into the spotlight, at a film screening weeks later, people notice everything. The way he listens more than he speaks. The way he chooses his words slower, heavier. The way he doesn't rush to charm the room anymore. A reporter asks, "Has your approach to interviews changed recently?" Leo pauses. Not like before. This time, the pause feels deliberate. "I think," he says, "I'm learning to sit with questions instead of escaping them." The room stills. It's not an apology. It's not an admission. But it's enough to shift the tone. Articles the next morning are gentler. Curious instead of accusatory. The narrative softens just slightly. Across town, Sunny Hostin reads those headlines over coffee. She recognizes the shift immediately. Not triumph. Not vindication. Something quieter. Impact. On The View, the moment becomes part of a larger conversation. Other guests reference it indirectly. Other interviews feel sharper, more intentional. The show's audience grows, comments filling with praise for not backing down and asking what others won't. Sunny never claims credit. When asked about it in a later interview, she chooses her words carefully. Sometimes, she says, the most powerful thing isn't what's said on television. It's what's felt, and what follows after. The audience applauds. Online, the divide never fully heals. Some fans still insist Leo was unfairly targeted. Others say the moment changed how they see him forever. But even the harshest critics begin to acknowledge something else. He didn't lash out. He didn't attack back. He didn't hide behind a statement. He absorbed it. And in a culture addicted to instant defenses, that restraint becomes part of the story. Months later, a documentary clip surfaces. Leo speaking privately about influence and self-examination. People link it back to The View. "This started there," someone comments. That silence did something. Sunny sees that comment one night and pauses, the corner of her mouth lifting just slightly. Because she knows the truth. That moment was never about winning an argument. It was about creating a crack in the performance. And through that crack, something real slipped through. The audience at home felt it. That strange intimacy of watching someone powerful lose their footing, not in flames, but in stillness. No shouting. No walk-off. Just a question, a pause, and a room that refused to look away. That's why the clip never truly disappears. It resurfaces whenever people talk about authenticity. About whether celebrities owe more than smiles and slogans. About what happens when the camera doesn't blink first. In the end, there is no villain in this story. Only a moment. A silence. And the ripple it sent through a culture ready to listen more closely. Now it's your turn. Did Leonardo DiCaprio handle that moment with quiet grace? Or did the silence reveal something he wasn't ready to face? Was Sunny Hostin right to press the question, or did the line between accountability and privacy blur too far? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want more explosive cinematic stories that pull you inside the moments celebrities never expected to define them, subscribe to Stage View, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who loves the drama behind the spotlight. Because sometimes the loudest stories, are the ones told without a single word.